Welcome to the Bad Ready Podcast. My name is Aaron McManus, and I'm here with my dad, Erwin McManus.
What a great day it is to be alive.
It is a good day. Today's a special day. Today is December 4th, and that is a Friday, and today is the day.
Am I allowed to shout?
You're allowed to shout.
I'm so excited. I know I have to always play things down.
You're allowed to shout.
Be cool, but I'm just really wired.
No, we enjoy joy. We back joy. We support joy.
And today is the launch of my new collection. I'm so excited.
So excited.
And you've built out the website.
We've done it all.
Yeah.
The two of us.
But the reason I mentioned
I
that, can you tell people where to go?
ErwinRaphaelMcManus.com.
So if you want to know more about the collection, if you want to see the pieces, if you want to be a part of the launch, go to ErwinRaphaelMcManus.com.
Yes, and you can also go to our Instagram. It'll be in both of our bios, and mine's Aaron C. McManus. Yours is Erwin McManus.
But you just started a new Instagram too for me.
I did, but I don't want to tell people what the name of it is yet because the name might change. But right now it is at Erwin_Raphael McManus, but we're working on getting rid of that underscore. But it's a process.
All right.
So...
Well, this is exciting. And
this is an exciting day, but I want to talk about something. You weren't letting me go anywhere negative in the last episode. You said joy only, but I almost quit on Saturday because I just wasn't really feeling doing this anymore. I felt kind of alone. And so I know I'm not alone, but sometimes it's harder than some days it's harder than others to realize that we're not alone in this. And then sometimes, I don't know, sometimes I get in my head. And I am my worst enemy. And I think sometimes self-talk ends up destroying my ability to stay focused and stay disciplined and stay driven.
So do you want to focus on self-talk? Or you want to focus on how not to quit?
Well, then something reinvigorated me. I wrote something kind of not dramatic, but something that was heartfelt. And then I posted it on the Bad Ready podcast. And then I got a lot of a great reception and a lot of people being I knew that this was going to happen because you guys are doing 2 episodes a week and there's no way of not getting tired and burnt out. But I wasn't burnt out. It's not a burnout. That's the thing. I don't think it's just sometimes when we create, I go, can we create anything new? And the last time we recorded the podcast, I was pretty done. I was pretty over it. You were brilliant in both podcasts. You brought so much to it and you really carried it.
Thank you.
But I was feeling done. With that said, then somebody tagged me in some alt-right trash. Made me mad. I'm not going to say his name because I do not think we should promote people that shouldn't be spoken of. Don't promote people you don't want to talk about. That's why I don't talk about that social media app with the little blue bird.
It was a person who I think was trying to be...
They thought I was going to have their back in it.
Because you have a lot of conservative views, then people think, then you're also going to carry these extreme conservative views, which you do not.
Yeah, but you look at my bed sheets, they don't have holes in them.
But I don't think that...
No, my pillowcases are actually pillowcases, not that KKK, alt-right, fascist stuff that you see.
But I don't think that the person who sent it is that way. I just think that sometimes what happens is that someone who maybe is alt-right or someone who may be alt-left says something you agree with and you don't realize that you're actually affirming way more than you just meant to affirm.
Right. And
so I'm going to give that person the benefit of the doubt.
Let me clarify. I don't think the person that tagged me or the person that got me mad are pillowcase cutting.
No, not at all.
KKK horseback riding people. The person I think speaking in the thing I got tagged in, I think is.
Well, I don't know if
you should see what he's doing between the hours of sunset and sunrise.
But I would say that.
Sorry, you're feeling really uncomfortable with the way I'm speaking right now.
No,
I will adjust.
I actually don't feel uncomfortable openly, emphatically, unashamedly denouncing anything alt-right, anything white supremacy, anything that's racist. I want to be really, really clear. Battle Ready goes to war against racism, white supremacy, anything that is anywhere close to that conversation.
Yeah, we also are super not into socialism, and we're super not into alt-right. So we find us somewhere in the middle, standing proud by our convictions.
Yeah. Who is we?
Who is we? We honestly, I don't know who we are anymore because I don't we were talking about this I got mad at this person and they said something that like, they said theology is greater than, and they use that super annoying greater than symbol you learn in math in like, 6th grade. Greater than, theology is greater than culture. And I said, no, it's not. Because everything Jesus did, there's a phrase for the culture that people love to trash. But everything Jesus did was for people.
That's right.
And not for the people they thought it would be for.
Yes, that's right.
And so when we say for the culture, he was actually doing it not to impress people, but to open the eyes of people who were furthest from him.
Yeah, and so ironically, Jesus would have put culture above theology because Jesus did not come to give us right theology. He came to change humanity, and it's humanity that creates culture. It's not theology that creates culture.
And that is the issue, though, when theology creates culture, i.e. Calvinism, because there are bigger murders in the entire history of the biblical world than John Calvin. Look him up. Google him. Murder is never okay, not even when it happened hundreds of years ago in the name of Jesus or God or religion. If anything, that's like, it's completely unacceptable. So if you're a Calvinist and you're listening, do the history, do the work, look yourself up and see what you're a part of.
You just want to make everybody mad today.
I don't want to make everybody mad. No, I only want to make the Calvinists, the alt-right, the KKK, and anyone who's cutting their pillow sheets up. That's it. And the Antifa and the socialists.
Well, no, wait a minute.
I like Sam Harris. Me and him are cool. We're good.
But I'm not going to let you, you can do whatever you want, but I don't believe that socialists fall in the category of alt-right.
No,
let me explain why.
Wait. No.
Let me explain why.
Go into the fine print of the BLM movement.
No, but they don't define alt socialism. You can be
No, that's right. But I is like far left.
Because you can be a socialist and genuinely care for every single human being. You cannot be a racist or a white supremacist and genuinely care about all human beings. And that's why they're not equivalent sides of the opposite spectrum.
Isn't the interesting thing, though, that like wasn't, and this is not the comparison I'm making right now, I'm also being mostly facetious. So if you're like coming at me right now being like, I paused this because he's thoroughly offended me and who is Aaron McManus to speak on any of these things, you have to understand. This is a little bit fun. It is a little bit fun, though, right? Like, we have to have some fun.
Yeah.
Be a little dramatic. I do mean a lot of it. But, like, if you're a part of the KKK or you're a part of the, like, Antifa, like, I don't want you to come after me. That's not why I'm saying this.
But do you want them to listen to Battle Ready?
Yes. I want them to because I want them to be changed. I want them to know Jesus, that their hearts change. Right?
Yeah, any ideology that gives you an excuse, a rationale, a reason to think you're superior to another human being or to hate another human being is evil. It's destructive and it's wrong.
But yes to all those things. I'm just on to the next thing because it does feel like, well, one, the last time I don't want to go into this. We're in it though.
Yeah, I will say it made me nervous. Look,
what makes you nervous?
It made me nervous when I used to be on Twitter, when I realized that there were people who were alt-right, who were genuinely white supremacists, who thought because I'm a Christian that I would agree with them. I'm like, in what universe does evangelical Christianity have anything to do with white supremacy, except I'm going, oh, it's unfortunate. There not only is a universe, there's a history. And so maybe the best thing we could do in this episode is to say that Jesus has no room in his tribe for white supremacy or for racism or for hatred of another human being based on anything.
On any level.
Yeah.
Yet
not even belief system.
Well, isn't this interesting though that the last we could say great, but last prolific or famous or infamous socialist that existed in the world was the German socialism, which became Adolf Hitler's. I don't even know how you describe that.
Oh, Nazism.
Yeah, but what was it before? I mean, he wrote, was it Mein Kampf as a socialist manifesto?
Would you consider it a socialist manifesto?
I mean, they call it a communist manifesto.
Yeah, it is a communist manifesto.
But wasn't socialism and communism kind
Yeah,
of
they're
grouped together
similar
in
enough
that era?
in that era. Yeah. Back then, everything was called communism, and it was more refined as socialism.
Well, and I bring this up because I've been watching Peaky Blinders. But in the 5th season, there's a whole thing going on, and right, obviously, like Peaky is like loosely like based off of the truth, but there was a man named Thomas Shelby. It was Peaky Blinder. It was like an old gang out of World War I that came back when the Irish didn't have any place kind of in British society. They started like underground economies to kind of smuggling booze and that whole thing. Not condoning any of that, but it's a really great show. 5th season, there's this whole narrative I had no idea even existed because I didn't realize that like Adolf was married by what is his name? Who's the Italian? Mussolini. No, sorry, he wasn't married by. He was mentored by Mussolini before he ever wrote Mein Kampf. And then the guy in Peaky Blinders, who's like the right-wing nationalist, was actually married by either Adolf or Mussolini. He was married to his second wife by.
Can someone do a fact check?
This?
Yeah, this is interesting. Like I'm gonna
whoever the main British guy
I'm gonna confess ignorance, and I don't know, but I'm really fascinated.
But it is interesting how like the times
Hitler was at the wedding
of essentially who was Oswald Mosley, who Mussolini and Hitler were trying to turn into the British Hitler. They were trying to like create the fascist nationalist.
The British Nationalist Party.
British Nationalist Party,
which was basically a socialist,
fascism, right?
Socialist party.
Yeah. And so they were trying to rise him up. So Peaky Blinders, whatever. That story, basically, they tie him to this guy because they're trying to embed him. But I find it interesting that is like one of the last socialist movement we've seen on Earth, other than in China.
Well, and Russia.
And in Russia, but
which continues.
Whatever Russia's doing, let's let them do that. Because I am afraid of all Russia.
I do think it's fascinating that China's communist and they have no health care and no universal health care. And Russia is socialist and they have one of the worst universal health care systems on the planet. Maybe just ahead of ours. I don't know. But I don't want to necessarily go there completely, except to say that ideologies can be effective or ineffective, right? But you don't always want to assume that every person who holds an ideology is everything that the extreme expresses.
No, but I do think that when you are a part of something, you do need to look at the history of what you are a part of.
Absolutely. I think you need to look and see what have you just connected yourself to.
Right. And people can say that with religion, but I'm not connecting myself with the Catholic Church or even with the medieval church or even Martin Luther, a part of the Reformation.
Or even necessarily Southern evangelical Christianity.
Definitely, and most definitely not them.
You're connecting yourself to the movement of Jesus Christ.
Yes, an ancient theology, an ancient movement, right?
Right.
So when you look at the originators of socialism it's pretty dark.
Yeah.
The originators of Calvinism, it's pretty dark.
And
you don't want to comment.
Well.
I'll comment.
I just don't know why you're putting them together.
I'm putting them together because I'm saying like the left was the right, and the right was the left.
And
they both have.
To that.
There's a lot of dark history on both sides, and I think if they addressed the dark history versus, like, it's so evident that we need to create a new system, not a new system of government, but a new party or a new way of connecting what we care about into a political movement and being represented on like a high level. It is very clear that we have pretty much old white guys or guys who were appointed by old white guys in the White House. It is so clear that it's like a game and we don't know who's the one dealing it out.
It's definitely a good old boys system.
It is a good old boy system that somehow Barack Obama figured his way into. Which
is extraordinary. On just a bizarre side note, I couldn't sleep last night. So a lot of times when I can't sleep, I begin dreaming and creating stories and everything like that. And I had this idea for an alternative history where somewhere in Mississippi there was a plantation owner who somehow grappled with the reality that slavery was evil, and that on his 500-acre farm, he created an internal nation inside of the South, and he educated all the African slaves that came over and set them all free and told them that all this land that we have is a shared property. And if you leave this property, and you're allowed to because you're free, but it's not a safe world out there. And I had this whole idea of creating this alternative world of what it would have looked like if one plantation owner had the courage and the integrity and the sense of righteousness to create a free nation inside of the United States before the Civil War. And I think the reason I was imagining that was just a reminder to myself that even if the world doesn't meet up to the standards that I believe are the human ideals, that everywhere I have power, I can create that kind of world. Everywhere where I have influence, I can initiate this better world. And so, I mean, you bring up several things that I've never been particularly fond of. I've always been a person who has been strongly opposed to Calvinism because I think it's an elitist ideology of election, that God selects people to be saved and selects other people to be condemned to hell. And that view of God to me is so nefarious that I think it actually distorts the character of God. And yet it's one of the most popular movements in America. And I don't think we realize that it is really rooted in a cultural elitism. I do think it's important. This conversation is important because ideologies have history and they have momentum and they actually give you a view of the world. And what I want...
Can you change ideologies?
I think you can among sincere people. I think that having conversations like Battle Ready are important because if you and I disagree on a way of seeing the world and we actually respect each other and have conversations, we might be able to come up with a new way of seeing the world. It's not just either or. And I remember years ago, I was in a conversation with a very well-known Calvinist, and we were walking through the parking lot, and he looked at me and he said, "Look, it's either ultimate power or ultimate source." I said, "Well, what do you mean by that?" And he goes, "Either God's ultimately powerful, and so he decides who's elected and who's not elected, or it's ultimate source, that God only has enough power to save certain people." And I remember listening to that.
That doesn't even make sense.
I know. And I remember calling my brother saying, "So this is the dichotomy this guy gave me." And Alex said, "Well, the real question is, why? Why are there only two choices?" And the problem is whenever someone gives you just two choices, you can know that your thinking is being manipulated. There's always a third way. There's always a better way.
There's probably lots of ways.
Yes.
And for every person who's taking that and saying, Aaron's a universalist. I do think, though, that is how we got universalism. Like, we were talking about this. Like the origin, like, I'm sure whoever created the idea that all roads lead to God was someone who was deeply empathetic.
Yes, because I think they were even countering things like Calvinism, saying that the mass of humanity has been elected for condemnation.
And I think that people genuinely want people to be better off in the next life than in the last.
Right.
And I think I always find Calvinism ironic or odd because it is a pretty like spiteful view, because it's saying, well, it's nice that you exist, but your existence has no purpose because only I've been chosen to go into the next thing. And I always find it so interesting into that, because I've always seen God as someone who would lean more that that when in my presence you can admit that I am God. He would rather have people who are more universal than people who were saying there is no chance that you can do it.
Yeah, I think that if you're going to be wrong about a view, the wrong that says God's going to find a way to get everyone to him regardless of our beliefs is closer to the character of God than a view that says God has condemned all of humanity to hell so that he can be famous and glorified and only redeem a small number of people. That view is less compatible with a God who is holy and a God who's merciful and a God who's loving.
But then the other side would say, but there's a God that judges and there's a God that is king and he is ruler and he is... How is it that we have such a medieval view of God?
Yeah, I think some of it is that we assume that God would use power the way we would use it. And that's not the way God uses power. I mean, even Jesus coming to serve humanity, putting a towel around his waist and washing his disciples' feet.
Rode in on a donkey.
Yeah, tells us that God has a very different view of power and the way he relates to humanity.
The donkey thing is so not my style. That's the thing. The thing that bothers me with the donkey is that I'm like, Jesus, why we got to do this? Like, there's cute girls here. Why we got to ride in on a donkey, Jesus? Like, I could just see one of them being like, Jesus, for real, get off the donkey.
No, but I remember one time I was having a conversation with the two guys who started Life is Good. And we were at an event and they were asking me about I spoke at an event and they were asking me about my spirituality. They said, you seem like a really spiritual person. I said, I am a deeply spiritual person. And one of them said,
what's Life is Good?
They're like a brand. They used to be a kind of a lifestyle brand.
Oh, cool.
Or,
Cool.
really, really positive, optimistic guys and from the Northeast. And one of them said, do you have the kind of spirituality that believes everything is the same? And I said, no, I have too much respect for people to say everything is the same.
Right.
And so we don't realize that when we say everything's the same, it's actually an incredibly insulting, dehumanizing statement. Because to believe that a Buddhist and a Muslim and a Christian and a Hindu and an atheist are really in the end all saying the same thing, that's all leading in the same direction, is kind of an insult to a person's free will and their personal intelligence. I like taking people from a position of respect. If you have a belief system, I'm going to respect that this is what you actually believe. I'm not going to try to manipulate it to make it look like it's really the same thing I believe.
So, okay, yes. So you would say to what I said about universalism versus the one in true way to go to heaven. Because I would believe that you do need to confess with your mouth and believe in your heart.
Yeah.
But I also do believe God is a merciful God. And I don't believe that ends in our lifetime.
Yes.
So I do believe that in the moment where we meet God, when we die, that his mercy does not end.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And everything that we learn in the Bible, which may seem like a contradiction, I think leans to God's mercy and never God's judgment. Because even our existence in and of itself is him leaning towards his mercy versus his judgment. Yeah.
And that's why it's interesting to me when people talk about like when bad things happen, like COVID or tsunamis, and Christians go, that's the wrath of God. And I'm going, have you read the Bible? Because the Bible actually says that the wrath of God was actually placed on Jesus. And so that all the wrath of God was fulfilled in his death through his crucifixion. So if you believe the Bible, then how are you still talking about all these things happening because of the wrath of God? Because actually what Jesus came to do is he came to unleash to all of humanity the grace of God, the compassion and mercy, the love of God, so that would be the singular experience we would have with God.
We were talking about this in the car. I think in the car. I don't remember things as well as these days because the
this is one of our theological conversations.
This is, but I was having this conversation of like, Dad, have you ever thought about what happens before everything happened? And you're like, what do you mean? I'm like obviously if God, well, here's the thing. If God created us, who created God? And then everybody's like, well, no one created God. But then how did God become God? Or was God just always God?
I said, those are the very things that used to give me migraines when I was a kid.
What happened?
But by definition, God is the one who is eternal.
So then
there is no before and no after.
But even the idea of the Alpha and the Omega signifies a beginning and an end. But what happened before the Alpha? What happened before the beginning?
Right.
Because we talk about God creating the heavens and the earth in 7 days, but what happened on day 0?
Okay. I'm going to say, first of all, that I'm old, but I wasn't there.
I know you went there.
So you're asking me for a personal description of what happened at the beginning of all things, and I'm starting to wonder if I'm looking my age. And
is this pointless to go into this?
no, I think this is one a part of where theology becomes philosophy, because we don't know.
We don't know.
We don't understand how God is eternal. It goes beyond our comprehension. So
but that's where we ended up. We talked about like our ability to fathom and understand.
Yeah.
It's why we only give other people two choices.
But this is how we know there's a God, because the concept of God is outside of our experience, that there could be a being that is eternal, that has no beginning, no end, that is outside of time. Every description about God is in complete contradiction to all of human experience. So how did we conceptualize this? How did we have this concept outside of our reality? And I think this is where the fingerprint of God is on the human spirit.
That's so fascinating, right? Because it's like for all from all of history that we can understand, and from us today to the Phoenicians, there was this search for something beyond themselves.
Yeah.
So where does this innate search come from?
See, I think that's like the proof of God.
Does it come from inside of us? Or does it come from seeing that there must be something else on the other side?
Yeah. Yeah. The proof of God is not in the discovery, it's in the exploration. It's like you don't search for God and then find a bottle and you go, wow, there's God. The proof of God is in our exploration that we're on the search for God. It's like, could I ask you like a personal question?
Sure.
Yeah. And,
sure, and then maybe not.
okay. Are you? Would you say that you're searching for that love that with another human being that would last all your life?
I'm saying I'm open to it. I'm saying if you're out there, 310-777-555-77777.
No, let me just.
Yes, of course. There is something in me that longs to be with someone else.
Right, but
everyone who
pretends you long to love someone completely and to be loved completely.
Of course,
and
I'm down to be loved partially. I'm down to be loved in fragments. You don't even have to like the whole album. Just like the single.
You have way too many metaphors for this, and they're coming so naturally. And but here's the point: that kind of love is not a love that you've experienced yet.
No, I've loved people.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying you haven't loved and haven't been loved.
But no, I haven't been married. No.
All right.
But then I see married people, and maybe that's why I haven't been married.
All right. Stay with me on the idea.
I am.
Because your soul can actually comprehend something that is almost transcendent. It goes beyond your experience.
Yes.
And then ironically, this elusively transcendent thing becomes more important than even the things that you can touch and hold and feel.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I would say yes. I would say that's true.
Yeah. And I think that human longing for human love is a shadow of our soul's longing for this transcendent divine love. That we've not experienced this. We can't even define it, but our souls still long for it so much, it's more important than anything we can actually attain in this life. Mm. I think that's the power and beauty of who Jesus is. If you're God, I don't know how many languages are on this earth, right? There's a lot of languages. There's at least more than like 5 languages on the earth. And if you're God, how do you communicate in a language where every human being can understand? And the language of God is Jesus. That the language God spoke to humanity is the life and person of Jesus, so that we could understand who God is and how he feels about us.
See, sometimes I would say this: if I ever struggled with the reality of God, mm-hmm. it would never be No, here we go. If I ever struggled with my faith, which I do all the time, it would be with the idea of Jesus more than the idea of God. God is easy for me to understand. I don't fully, because I understand that I can't fully understand him. But we're like, Jesus, I'm like, okay, I like it. I like it. I do. I like it, and I think it's a beautiful, I think his life is beautiful. I struggle with some aspects of it, but I think it's okay. Like it doesn't mean I don't believe in Jesus. I believe in Jesus. I accepted Jesus into my heart. But it's harder to understand for me than it is for God to understand. Because I can understand the limits of my humanity. I understand that when I do this, things are not created. You know what I mean?
You do that so well.
I thought
I think you've been practicing.
Yeah, I did. But I also do understand that the way God has interacted with humanity has always been through humanity. And so understanding even the stories that God has given us and understanding the lives that he's placed inside of, whether it's the Bible or in human history, is a representation of us understanding the personality and the character of God. And so Jesus, even though I have a harder time with Jesus, I'm like, there is no doubt in my mind that how does one man become that singularly influential? He rode on a donkey. There is nothing cool about that, other than the fact that it's not cool. You know what I mean? And it is like everything he did is such a representation of, I think, the way God interacts with humanity, but then the way God wants humanity to see him. Because I really struggle in the Bible. I struggle with this line, Jesus is king.
Right, but I don't know if you struggle...
Or King Jesus. That's really...
I think you struggle more with the way Christians tend to describe or paint Jesus. Like because it seems to me like it bothers you when people talk about like King Jesus all the time or something like that.
Well, I just hate it. I just don't think it's like.
But I think it's because you feel that people are creating an image of Jesus that Jesus actually didn't make for himself. That he came and really painted a picture of servant Jesus.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and
well, because King Jesus is let down. Servant Jesus is an exemplary
example.
Example of the way to live your life. And I think everything he did was antithesis of King Jesus. You know what I mean?
You said to me one time, everybody who lived during Jesus' time expected Jesus to come as this king on a white horse and in splendor and grandeur.
It's King Jesus. They wanted him to come as Crusader King Jesus who'd come and save the world.
And they were disappointed because he didn't come like that. He came as servant Jesus.
Yeah, a sacrificial lamb.
Yeah, and then you said to me, I wonder if we keep projecting this image into the future because we really don't like the way he came the first time, so we're hoping he gets it right the second time.
For sure. We're always so disappointed in Jesus.
And maybe he is...
We are now the same people that didn't believe him the first time.
And maybe that's a part of the way that we keep misrepresenting him because we keep trying to create a King Jesus Christianity rather than a servant Jesus Christianity.
Yep.
Wow, we're going into Christmas. And the story of Jesus is born of a virgin, of a woman who is not of nobility or wealth or power, in a story that brings shame and dishonor and disrespect.
Yeah, because it's interesting, right? Jesus was a bastard. To the rest of the world, Jesus is a bastard. Jesus is Jon Snow. I don't think we've talked about it on this podcast before.
No, Jon Snow is a perfect metaphor for Jesus.
Yeah. And if you don't like Game of Thrones because there's nudity, sex, all the things, Battle of the Bastards is the greatest episode of television I think I've ever seen. Like if you're into like action, like Braveheart, Gladiator, but it's the greatest, I think, representation of like this Jon Snow who's of royal blood, but it is taken in as a bastard because they're trying to hide his true identity because his true identity would be dangerous for his own life. And then he comes to find out who he truly is later in this story, and that is Jesus. And I think we have such a hard time with this understanding that, and I use the word like bastard? Is that going to be cut out? Do we need to? Is that,
No, I think
it's an ancient word, right? Like that's a yeah.
Yeah, I
Is
think
it
I think
not?
you
I don't
used it
mean
in a very appropriate way.
right.
Yeah.
And I say that,
And it carries the weight of importance.
yes.
Yeah.
I don't say that to degrade Jesus. I say that because if you're looking at it from a human perspective, this is who Jesus is, and that is the brilliance of Jesus. He came in a form in which the rest of the world thought it was more interesting. Because if he had come the King of the Jews, the rest of the world would have gone to war against Jesus. But he came lower than the rest of the world.
They didn't know how to go to war against him.
And he didn't know how to go to war against him.
Yeah, and so
he unlocked the hearts of everyone, and it was the Jewish people who could not be unlocked.
Yeah, so this, we love the romance of being born in a manger, being born in a barn, born in this simplicity, this poverty, this humility. But we still want to create the white horse image of Jesus because we think it's just better for him. We feel like Jesus is
It's
still
better PR.
Yeah, he still mismarketed himself. He didn't really. So we need to upgrade Jesus to make sure everybody knows. No, he's King Jesus. He's all powerful Jesus. He's white horse Jesus. He's judging the world Jesus. He's all powerful Jesus.
Yeah, fear him, Jesus.
Because we still don't believe that the narrative God chose to be a servant, to be a sacrifice, to be the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world is the more powerful story of God.
My favorite thing that I think just utterly destroys Calvinism is the fact that the Magi traveled across the land to go and give gifts, that the unelected were chosen to see and understood, that people who did not believe in God but were open to God, that were open to the universe.
Wasn't that the unraveling of all the Gospels, that everyone that Jesus accepted was someone who was unelected? They were not, the right people, and that was part of the problem for the religious leaders.
And this may be maybe not the topic we want to end with, but I want to talk about it because I did get an email of someone, and it was a really heartfelt email. And it was really open, and we get a lot of amazing people from around the country, around the world. So you have to understand, if you're listening to this from New York or LA, a major city, it's different than the Midwest. It's different than the South. There's different perspectives. There's a different background.
Sure.
And from Europe to Australia. There was a young guy, I think he was a young guy, and he was asking me like, hey, one of my best friends is gay now, and he's getting married, and I accepted him, and I loved him, and I've been his best friend still, but would Jesus go to his wedding? Do I go to his wedding? And it was kind of long, and it was really like, he wasn't trying to be judgmental, he was genuinely trying to understand.
Sure.
But what I didn't like was that he answered his own question. Because he's like, because I don't think Jesus would, and da-da-da-da-da. And I was like, that's the problem. We answer the question. And I just responded, because I was so tired when I got the email. I was like, nope, Jesus would be there. Hope you go. Like 100% Jesus would be at the wedding. He would be at the wedding. He'd probably be in the front row, and he probably would have turned the water into wine afterwards too. Do it again. I just think we've never understood. Jesus always did things that we never understood, and that's why I always think like okay.
It's such an interesting imagery because Jesus would go to the party with the tax collectors.
Yeah,
and that ruined his reputation because he was with, quote, those sinners.
Yeah.
And to this day, we haven't got it right. We still think we shouldn't be in the wrong rooms, and yet that's the right room. But
we should be in the wrong rooms, but we should be the right people in the wrong rooms.
Yes.
We shouldn't be the wrong people in the wrong rooms. And that's the issue when we turn into the wrong people in the wrong rooms.
Yeah.
That's not who Jesus was. Jesus was the same person.
He was always the right person in the wrong rooms.
Right.
And what's interesting is even when he was in the room with all the Pharisees and Sadducees and teachers of the law, they were still the wrong room.
Yeah.
They just couldn't see through their own self-righteousness to realize that room was just as bad as any other room Jesus had ever walked into, maybe worse.
Okay, I think we should end the podcast because it's so good, but I really want to go into Solomon's temple. But we'll do that the next episode. Do you feel good on ending on this?
I do, because when Jesus stepped into the world, when he came and was born of a virgin, he came into the wrong room. Because not one of us deserved God to come to us.
But even that branding, born of a virgin, because to the people who are insider, we understand he was born of a virgin. To the outsider, he was
Right.
Was she really a virgin?
But he didn't protect his reputation because he never intended to protect his reputation. He was going to allow his reputation to be tainted by his friendship to us.
Because it wasn't about his reputation. It was about who he was.
It was never about him. It was always about how he loved us.
So that brings the question up, and we were going to wrap up, but I know I'm not done yet. Would it change who Jesus is if she wasn't a virgin? Would it change who Jesus is if you know, I don't know.
And the ironic thing of all of this is that if God had chosen to do it differently, it wouldn't have changed the story. It just happened to be the way God chose to do it. And I think part of it is because he wanted a defining marker that he spoke through Isaiah hundreds of years before, that it would be a virgin who would give birth to a son. And that became the defining characteristic for the Messiah, because so many people could have said, I'm the Messiah, I'm the Messiah, I'm the Messiah. So God needed something that could not be replicated by someone else. Only God could give birth to a virgin. So that became a clear-cut filter to know, Jesus is the Savior of the world.
Also, God just works in such unique ways. He called a bank shot before he ever shot the shot. He was like, Isaiah, real quick, bank. And then thousands of years later, he's like, made it.
That's a Steph Curry. He shot the three, turned around, walked away, and said, it's going in.
But I asked that question, and people are going to be tripping, I think, about it, because it doesn't change who Jesus is to me. Because on one side, where I question so much about Jesus, it wasn't the virgin birth. It wasn't the Magi. It was just simply the fact that he was so clearly sent from God. Mm-hmm. And God called him his own son, and he called God his father, and that it was so clearly that, because it doesn't make sense, because I'm not able to fathom it, because why would God do it this way, is the only probably reason why I believe it. And I feel like he changed my life, so there's lots of reasons, but I'm saying it's not like that any one person saying it louder over a microphone makes me believe it more.
Yeah, you know what a lot of Christians don't want to admit because it feels unsafe?
Oh, no.
We will argue all the facts in the Bible to prove that Jesus is God. But the reason we believe it so strongly is that we've had a personal encounter with Jesus. It's the encounter I've had with Jesus in my life that I can't shake. And everything else is just information that helps validate this unexplainable reality that I didn't even believe in Jesus, and I had an encounter with him.
Okay,
that changed my life.
It's that's just spurred so many more thoughts. So I want to pick this up. Can we pick this up on whenever we record next?
All right. Hey,
I want to talk about the voice of God and how I can't ever hear it.
Or maybe you can hear his voice, but you've learned how to ignore it.
Well, I feel like I read the voice of God more than I hear it.
Okay. Well, now we're ready for the next episode.
No, because I want to talk about like synesthesia and the voice of God. Because we were talking about synesthesia 2 nights ago at dinner.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about that. Okay.
All right. Hey, man, this has been a really fun battle ready.
This is fun.
Hey, if you were listening today and you felt insulted by anything we said, keep listening. No. And we really want to dive into deep, meaningful issues. And Aaron, I want to just commend you for always having the courage to dive into stuff everybody else tiptoes around. Because I've actually gotten questions personally that said, why are you not a Calvinist?
Yeah,
and
so I feel it isn't true. That's the first part.
Like today, what I think was maybe a helpful explanation of why I'm not. And
I know you cut out part of what I said, but I do think that it would be amazing for you to sit down with that guy. The Calvinist, the head of the Calvinist movement.
Well, there's not a head. There's quite a few people, and there are people that I really.
Well, whether he says, I don't think he ever said he's the head. I think people have kind of looked to him to be like kind of
one of the main spokespeople. Yeah. And for me, having the conversation about Calvinism with Christians isn't as important as it is. I want people without Jesus to know that God chooses you. And that's what is important to me. If you're listening and you're wondering, wait a minute, did God choose me? My answer is yes.
Yes, 100%.
God chose you. He's just waiting for you to choose him.
Yes.
And that's what I think is so important.
Thank you for listening to the Battle Ready podcast. We get into some trouble here, so see you soon, and I'm really excited. And today's the day that we launched a new brand, so check it out on Instagram and ErwinRaphaelMcManus.com. And I'm glad you listened and stayed and listened with us and followed us and felt awkward with us. So
That's awesome.
You can rate and review the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, and you can leave a comment on the Instagram. We love you, and we'll see you guys next week.
See you next time.
See you next time. Bye.